Allow us to take a journey trip into our minds, where constant conscious conspiracies is what you'll find. Cause see, this is only the unified version of the BBC podcast, where BB is Bryan Barnett and the other half is Blake Burton, you dig? Where we have topics that might frighten you, but are only here to enlighten you, as two of Seattle's brightest dudes ignite the truth and then just do it like the Nike swoosh. So again, we cordially invite you to the BBC podcast, Blake Burton and Bryan Barnett Conspiracies. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. This is the fourth or fifth?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think this is the
fourth episode of the BBC podcast. I'm your host, Blake Burton, and also another host on my right-hand side,
Bryan Barnett. Hello. 444 in the middle, if you with it.
Hell yeah. There we go. And we're going to be focusing on Bryan's newish. It came out in October, am I right?
No, I dropped it in December.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but when was but you released Voices in October.
Yeah, Voices came out in October. And
okay.
The visual for that came out in October. But yeah, I needed a little bit more time, so then it came out in December.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And what date? Was it a special date, right?
It was the 4th. So, I mean, nothing special. It was as special as DistroKid could get it out. So, but yeah, December 4th. That was the day we dropped the SlumFlower Series on the world.
Hell yeah.
Yes, sir.
Have you gotten some pretty good reception from that so
far? Yeah, definitely. I mean, numbers wise, yeah, I would definitely say so. I've got this is the most listeners I've ever had on Spotify. So it's from Emotion the Poet and my highest song ever being 50 plays and probably having 15 monthly listeners. I mean, this one is it's at I have 3,000 monthly listeners now, which is cool.
Hell yeah.
And not at all in any braggadocious way, but just in a way of really taking some time to fall back and try to put the work in and kind of see that being reflected is just it's a beautiful feeling. So that's going well. And then just the DMs of just, hey, this was cool, I like this one because blah blah blah, definitely it's just all love. It's positive. And yeah, man, the reception's been cool. So just looking forward to kind of throw some more stuff out there. But yeah, as far as the overall, yeah, man, it's been good.
You can take over a town with 3,000 people. Just look what happened with the Capitol.
Yeah, that was definitely a takeover. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, honestly though, have you gotten into Patreon yet, or thought about Patreon?
I definitely need to. I think I'm trying to figure out what I would make as a valuable piece for somebody to subscribe to me for, and I think I guess early hint for anybody who listens, I'm thinking of going back and writing poems for people maybe once a month, or making something specialized. I want to keep it personal, to whoever, subscribes or feels what I'm doing and wants to, kind of add monetary value to it. But yeah, I'm thinking of either doing some type of poem, or I feel like an unreleased song just isn't enough nowadays.
Right.
For somebody to really subscribe to your movement, I want to at least acknowledge them and their presence. So I haven't found anything yet, but I'm definitely open to anything anybody might want to tap in and say.
Yeah, I've been looking at YouTube channels who have Patreons, and I've seen YouTube channel I showed you that this, I think it's the YouTube channel is Meat Cannon. I showed you the video of the SpongeBob guy.
Yeah.
That was a weird video.
That was awesome.
But basically, Meat Cannon, I think it's Cannon or Canyon, I forget.
No, I think it's Cannon. Yeah, I think
okay,
right.
But basically it's a YouTube channel where they caricaturize certain childhood TV shows and make them very fucked up, but they're done really well. The animation and the voiceovers are really great, and they're the videos are usually only 3 minutes or so, but those 3 minutes will haunt you. And
truly.
One of the recent ones is SpongeBob, and it's very I don't even know how to describe it, but it's the animation is just over the top. But
it's beautifully abstract.
But basically what their Patreon page does is literally it's $1 a month or something like that, the base, and you get a sticker. But that's enough for people to want to subscribe for a month. For $1. It's just for a sticker or something, a personalized sticker. So let's say that that those 3,000 monthly listeners that you have are for sure, no matter what month it is, they're going to be those 3,000 monthly listeners. You promote your Patreon to them, maybe only half of them are interested. That's 1,500 people. Maybe
Facts.
even less than half, 1,000 people. But then you have 1,000 people that want to spend $1 a month, which is nothing. Like a fucking coffee is more than $1.
True.
So if they spend $1 a month, that's $1,000 in your pocket.
Yeah, that definitely adds up too. Especially doing independent creative stuff. Like, yeah, I might have to really double back on that.
Shit like that. It's there's so much money out there. I know, like I'm definitely broke right now. I'll be honest. Like everyone's kind of broke right now. Even if you're working, just like the economy right now is going into the toilet.
Facts.
But there is still so much money out there, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, some people are even emotionally broke right now, because,
yeah.
with this virus and everything else happening in the world, I mean, it would be weird if you weren't almost,
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, it has been a year, honestly.
Yeah, I thought, let's see, that's the thing. You can't say it's been a year anymore because it's a new year.
It was a year.
It was a year. But I feel like it's an extension. I've already said this a few times, but I feel like 2021 is an extension of 2020. But it doesn't mean it has to be. I just feel like it's just started out this way.
I could understand that.
But when I was talking to Sam, I'm really not a freaking political person. But I was talking to Sam Chow, and he was saying that he thinks it's a new year because of like Joe Biden's president. But if you're a black guy, Joe Biden and even Kamala Harris aren't really good people. So like I feel like you can't really look at simple things like that. That's not. I've been focusing on like self growth, so I don't feel like looking towards politics is self growth.
I can understand that. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe even with the Joe Biden remark too, I feel like it's definitely like a new year as far as maybe just like having a new mindset and just trying to look positive towards like what we do have as opposed to what we had, and like just kind of moving in that way. But yeah, ultimately, I like you said. I mean, I think that self piece is going to be what'll really change the year. Like if you want to, like a lot of times people want to change the world, but first you have to change your own world, and then be able to implement that type of change on like a social global level. And I feel like that's probably just where a lot of people are at too. But looking at people like Biden and Kamala, like, yeah, definitely, probably not, definitely the lesser of the two evils,
Yeah.
I think is what a lot of people are probably feeling. But definitely like, I would take it as like a small victory, a nice, drop in the bucket. But if we allow it to be a tidal wave, then, you know what I'm saying, we could really do some things, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So when we did I think it was, what the fuck was it? There's No Structure podcast.
Mm-hmm.
When we did the collab with them, you guys were talking about something like some date that was gonna.
Oh, the 12/21/2020. Yes, sir.
Did anything happen with that date?
Yeah, I mean, ironically enough, yes. And then the no is from people who might not have been at that level yet to, comprehend what's happening. So just like real quick, basically, like for anyone who may or may not have been aware, so 12/21/2020 was the day of the Great Conjunction, and essentially Jupiter and Saturn were right across from one another in a conjunction. And what's funny about that, because this touches a bunch of different planes, so astrologically that's its own thing, and then socially, like scientifically, and then even historically too. So Saturn represents structure, restriction, law, different things like that, where Jupiter is more so like expansive, open, creative. And ironically enough, with that conjunction, it actually caused Saturn to fall in a way that a lot of different political structures are falling and will fall, because a lot of these structures weren't necessarily like, they weren't really supposed to be there in the first place. They didn't actually add any benefit to a society as such, nor did they nor could they, really add benefit, capitalism, different things like that, so if you really look at it, you can see a lot of different political structures and other structures, even on a global scale, falling in ways where, it's almost like a new hope is starting to come out of that. And then in order to have that, as a lot of those portals are closing, and new ones are opening up, it's allowing for people to, really kind of have that 2020 vision to see that, wow, we didn't really need these things. We just needed what was on the inside and then share that with other people who are like-minded, therefore the collective consciousness, so it is something that is going to take a long time to really enact. This would be something that we should come back and look at this episode like 4 months from now. But it'll be something slowly but surely is happening. And yeah, man.
So 12/20. So you said 12/21/20.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the start of something. It didn't mean like everything was going to happen on that specific day.
Right, because what essentially it is the end of the world, but how we know it, how we've been able to perceive it for different people, so like the feeling of Sonder, of other people having, vivid lives just as complex as our own, but like understanding that we all really have that. So how I perceive the world is, of course, different how you perceive the world, but like, this concept of it coming to an end where we realize that a lot of these things, just because you put syrup on it doesn't make it a pancake, you know what I mean? And like that being something that is now going to be a, across the board, mindset, and offer the choice of either evolving or repeating these same structures that didn't do anything for us 20 years ago, that are just now in the same way, except maybe wearing a wig, maybe just someone tried to maybe add a little extra to make it look like it's not the same thing, but either repeating those cycles or those curses or those generational, whatever you want to call it, or evolving out of those and moving with the world that is evolving in and of itself as well. This age of Aquarius, this information age, this digital age, this, like evolving, because that's what the world has had to do. That's what, lifting our vibrations is helping the world move into a fifth dimensional state where, that's the only place we're going, you know what I'm saying? And that's, you can choose to do that and you can choose to not do that. But that ladder from climbing from, a fifth dimensional, almost universal consciousness of just love and light towards everyone, and then climbing back down to be in a third dimensional state of just acting out of fear, frustration, different things that structures like capitalism or the government a lot of times will keep you in to suppress the inside. That doesn't have to exist anymore. You know what I'm saying? Generational trauma is like, you break, who's ever listening, you'll be the one to break that in your family, in your life, because the time is now. The time has always been now, but it's more clear than ever. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, it's definitely a long time coming, but all of that to say that it's a long time coming, but it's coming.
Maybe can you tell me if this is on the right track for like me personally?
Totally.
So like I told you, I was like in a relationship for like 4 years.
Totally.
Up until like August, and then I met someone new, and what I realized, one of the reasons why I got out of my 4-year relationship was because I was spending more time with my podcast than with them. And then when I realized during this pandemic, like I didn't see them for like 5 months, and it didn't like affect me at all. Like I was really like, I was doing my podcast almost every single day, teaching myself skills,
right? And
like I'd like forget to like even check in on them, which that causes problems in any relationship. You're supposed to check in with them, but like even when I used to have, it's gonna be like a back and forth thing, but like so like a year ago, like before the pandemic, I'd have like 2 jobs at a time, and I would always say I had 3 jobs, which included my podcast. I would say my podcast was a 3rd job,
right?
And then when the pandemic hit, I couldn't do my brand ambassador job. I couldn't do the radio station job. I couldn't even do the podcast job for a little bit because I was like, I can't go to my studio. And like, it was right before Zoom was very popular. But Zoom like came out of nowhere. Like I realized Zoom was actually been around since like, I think it was like 2015, but like it shined during the pandemic.
Honestly.
But so I basically like, I took it as a little bit like when the pandemic first hit, I kind of took it as a vacation. And then I realized I was missing doing my interviews, so I started doing the interviews over Zoom. And I just bought a lot of stuff that I bought like new microphones, new photo shoot lights, new laptop, all this stuff for my podcast. And I spent like 5 months just learning stuff during the podcast. And I was like, I almost forgot I was in a relationship. And like, no matter what, like even when I was in a relationship and seeing them all the time, I would tell like other artists or like even like artists in the industry, I'd be like, what is something that you kind of regret? when you first started out. And a lot of like big time artists would almost say like, not even in like in a selfish way. I think it's a realistic way. They'd be like that I got married so young or had kids really young. And I was like, yeah, see, exactly. Why be in something super serious or something when you're like young, when you're trying to still find yourself?
Right.
And I was kind of thinking about the entire time I was in the relationship, but I cared about them a lot. But then once I started hanging out with them after the pandemic, like, you know, like it was probably 5 months down the road, so like late summer, I realized that like it wasn't there. It was more because we'd been together for so long. But like I really enjoyed doing the podcast.
Right.
So then that ended, met someone else, and that ended also. And I felt like I kind of felt like I needed to be in a relationship after I was out of a relationship because I kind of felt a little lonely, I guess. But I also found someone I connected with. But then I realized after that relationship ended, that was like late November.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes, so it happened that the second thing I was in, it was not really a relationship because I wanted to take things slow because I had gotten out of a 4-year relationship and all that. But what I realized was when you were saying the 12, 21, 20 thing, it took me a few weeks to like kind of recover after like diving into that new type of thing you can call a relationship. I guess maybe like a relationship kind of. It was,
like a situationship.
Situationship.
Totally.
Like I definitely invested a lot of time into that, but I had found like a good sweet spot where I could do my podcast and hang out with the person.
Totally.
Versus before I was only doing the podcast and I couldn't see the other person. So it took me a few weeks to like kind of get over that. And like I stopped doing my podcast for 2 weeks even, which for me seemed it was a really long time. I don't know if anyone else really noticed that because I always put out content. So even if I could stop for a month and it would still take people a long time to catch up to what episode I'm on because I put out so much stuff. So I took that time to like kind of recover. And I guess that week like of Christmas, the week before Christmas and the week of Christmas, I was so dieting has been like becoming like a very important thing to me. And whenever you start a diet, it literally takes like a week of dieting for your body to get used to it. So I started a week before Christmas of dieting. It took my body a little bit to get used to it. And then the week of Christmas, like because the 12/21 was the week of Christmas, right? So that's when I actually like figured out my dieting completely.
Oh, wow.
And like that has been like a total lifestyle change for me. I realize how much processed food we eat, like, you know, unneeded carbs and sugars. And like I'm not a huge smoker or drinker or anything like that, but I've noticed like a lot of friends who I used to think they did it as fun are starting to use that as like coping.
Yeah.
And what I noticed, and I'm not a big guy whatsoever, but I noticed like whenever I got sad, I would just eat ice cream or something like that. Like I'm the biggest sugar guy in the entire world. I don't look like it, but I could. Oh my! I just sugar. It's like crack to me. It's like crack for everyone, but for me especially. So once I started to like lean away from all that stuff, and of course, occasionally I'll still eat it and stuff. But I realized how even sugar or carbs was like affecting my brain chemistry, and like it would actually like make me feel a little cloudy, even if I didn't realize it. And because you know it's like a drug. Sugar and carbs are like a drug, especially the processed stuff.
Thanks.
So I feel more like mentally clear and physically clear, and I think it started for me like, you know, after I got out of the second situationship, and I just took time to actually focus on myself because maybe at the time wasn't even smart for me to try to meet someone new. Because I just got out of something for so long. So I've been really, really focusing on like self-growth. And so that kind of makes it, does that align kind of with the 12/21?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, you know, I would say like no matter what, it's always kind of like, you know, everybody's walking their own journeys and paths too, but like a lot of times if you look back, kind of how you were saying that, like, you know, you kind of notice that a lot of those things were starting to line up at that time. But I mean, ultimately, like, I think what comes to people, and this was brought to me at one point in time, but like the idea of like in order to ascend, you have to kind of find yourself in a very isolated kind of just a really lonely place, honestly, you know. And I think that is because in order to really touch, you know, these heights, you have to know what the lows feel like, you know. And it sounds like kind of that was being built up for you, whether or not you were aware of that. But you know, from the relationship of 4 years that, you know, unfortunately came to an end, and then, you know, it sounds like, you know, even taking the time off from something that you're incredibly passionate about, 2 weeks to feel like 2 years, you know. And like, I understand, you know, what you're saying with that. And then to, you know, try to kind of bounce back in that way out of just, you know, human beings are not necessarily meant to be alone, you know. And trying to maybe find that comfort of just somebody else's presence or their company, especially in a time like this, you know. But you know, realizing that that void that you had to fill, which sounds like you've been just filling with yourself, self-development, you know, more time in the podcast, more time, you know, sharpening your own blade, you know, instead of maybe looking for somebody else to sharpen it with you, you know, but just literally being by yourself to ascend, you know. Yeah, I think that definitely, you know, kind of aligns with a lot of kind of what was happening in that time, because energetically what was happening at that time was that a lot of portals were closing so new ones were could open, you know. A lot of doors were closed so a new door can open, you know. A lot of levels were, you know, people were leveling up. All of those things are the same thing essentially, you know. But just like, yeah, that sounds exactly what you're talking about. You know, you have to, you know, you have to hit the ground to know what getting up will really feel like, you know. And maybe that happened with the first relationship that you know, didn't maybe go in the direction you wanted to, and then, you know, maybe it took the second one to really show you like, maybe I just need to do a me thing right now, you know. And like, I believe like, you know, your angels, spirits, God, whatever you want to call it, but like God will talk to you through people, you know. And you'll start to notice those things as people, like the people you were talking to were like, yeah, I wasn't really trying to get married at this age, and yeah, I wasn't. You start to hear the same thing over and over again. Not that you have to live your life accustomed to anyone else, but you can, you're hearing these messages because there's something that you need to hear, you know. There's something about that that needed to make its way to your vibration to be like, he'll understand this, you know. Because you could have talked to anybody, they could have said literally any other thing on the planet. I mean, you know, thousands of different languages of different sentences that could have rolled out, but you heard what you needed to hear, that you resonated with, because, you know, one vibrational frequency to another, that's just how that happens, you know what I mean? So I definitely believe, you know, it's not necessarily always just kind of like, you know, I see the signs or whatever, but you know, there's definitely a scientific, you know, mathematic component to it as well that'll align, you know, almost in a pattern way that'll be able to have you kind of reevaluate or reassess almost analytically, like, oh wow, yeah, actually that does kind of, you know, make sense. Not so much of like spirits and angels and stuff, but really if you, you know, look at what you just said, I mean, it all sounds like it lined up, you know. And then kind of from then, if you were to look at where you were then to literally the person that's sitting right next to me now, you know, you can see the process of having to get down low, you know, but literally build yourself back up to get to that closest, best version of yourself that you know exists. Because, you know, 6 months ago you weren't doing any of this stuff, you know. And now you look at where you're at with either editing, the graphic design, you know. And that all came, you know, in order to create you have to first destroy, you know. And you had to destroy who you used to be, or what was associated with that, what was attached to that, to then create this new life for, you know, blank, you know. And that blank you're filling in now, you know what I mean? So
I feel like it really didn't feel like 2020 was a year. But it really was a long ass year when you really think. It's like, it's a weird thing. You can say it's been a long year, short year, but like I feel like I definitely grew a fuck ton. But then I see some of my friends or even artists who haven't grown at all, and I feel like how is that possible? I feel like there's so much time to have grown.
Yeah, you know. And I mean, I feel like that's totally like, you know, because, you know, everybody has to kind of water themselves. And I think I look at it like everybody's at a different watering schedule, you know. So it's like, you know, some plants you have to water, you know, every other 3 days. Some plants you might water once a week. Some plants you might, you know, water, you know, every other week. You know what I mean? Because, you know, their roots, you know, require different things, can hold so much. And like, no matter what, they still grow, you know, they still put out oxygen, they still put their energy out and stuff. But like, you know, you know, it just looks different, you know what I mean? And I think for the people who have not necessarily tried to water themselves when they needed to, you know, eventually that's kind of that evolve or repeat, you know. Eventually you'll repeat that cycle of, damn, I didn't take care of myself when I needed to, so I'm only going to keep following in these footsteps until I realize that I need to take care of myself when I need to, you know. And like, you know, or you'll evolve out of that and be like, damn, should have watered myself on Wednesday. Next Wednesday, I'll set the reminder Tuesday night, and Wednesday I'll be good to go. And then, begin to set the habit, and like, I think for people, even other artists who were like, who maybe didn't necessarily use this time, efficiently to like grow a craft, they probably grew in the background, in the shadows, anyway. And then, maybe just grew a part of themselves that wasn't artistic because, so like, I feel like some people realize that like, not is it that art is not for them in that way, but more so that like, sometimes who you have to portray to be is really not who you are at all. And that version of you that's behind the mask needs to grow because you end up wearing the mask by yourself anyway. And when there's literally not an audience to do this for, I mean, at all, it's like, wow, I might as well take this off and, see what do I really like to do? You know what I mean? Like, even for myself, bro, like around this time, like with growing and stuff, like outside of the music and the poetry and the creative stuff, like I started riding my bike because I was like, damn, I forgot I'd like to do that, because I was so busy, trying to, either monetize off of this skill or, produce in a way. But that was the age we were in. We were in a very like mass production era, the age of Pisces, like that's where we just came from. So it's like a lot of people were doing that, and some people haven't broken out of that mindset yet, where it's like, damn, I need to focus on me, and don't know how to be selfish in a way that is still selfless, but instead are just like, time to give everything I have away and never work on the craft because they've are extending themselves in so many ways that they can't give themselves quality because they're giving out quantity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really don't know if like, I feel like it's a certain extent you can call this pandemic like a gift, but at the same time it's that can be so offensive to some people who are not in like a place where they can look at the bright side of a pandemic, because there's a lot of downsides to it. But I feel like, who would have imagined that there was just, we would have been given over a year to just like, no matter who you are, though, at this point, though, you're at least able to see like what was actually important and what wasn't important. Like everyone is able to take a step back, which was important. Like, who would have thought there would have been a time like this where like everyone at the same time, like everyone in the world was given the opportunity to take a step back and reevaluate.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's definitely, I call it like a double-edged sword, because I think it was something that like, of course, like, like this hit, jobs and the economy and, the education system, like in different ways that might necessarily never bounce back. And I mean, definitely threw off a lot of things, even for, artists and, venues closing, and then the venue itself being a business and the people work, what I'm saying? Like all of that is definitely like a very negative thing. And then, of course, the biggest, like all the deaths and just like, the virus itself just being out. Like, I feel like that is definitely the, the sword, a no knee moment, if you will. Like, what I'm saying? I think the other side definitely is kind of like, yeah, honestly, like who would have thought that you would be able to literally have, a year to literally just kind of figure your shit out. You know what I mean? Like, there's not necessarily like a rush to do anything because you realize that everybody's moving on the same time. Like, no one really knows what they're doing. Everybody's just trying to figure it out and just figure out how to keep rolling forward. Like, jobs are probably as lenient as they can be right now because it's like, we don't know what to do. Like I work with kids outside of this, and it's like, even from their perspective, this put them in a place to almost upgrade their programming so much faster because, you talk about having to grow up fast. Like this has never happened really ever in the history books where, like something has really changed the mindset of people on such a global scale, and it demanded that to happen. Like you could like, job interviews, you'll probably never shake somebody's hand again. Like,
oh shit,
think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like it'd be years before, and some jobs may never even have that again. An in-person interview, like, you will probably never play outside at any park or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? It's really interesting to see kind of like, how it's kind of forced people to just almost kind of just rely on themselves and then other people in a way. But like, yeah, man, this is interesting, I will tell you.
So, on the back to the thing about like kids having to grow up fast.
Totally.
Do you think, like, if you're exposed to something, like even if it's like a image of something, no matter what it is, it doesn't even have to be sexual. It could be like maybe something gory,
totally,
just anything. It doesn't have to be negative, even just like, because I feel like when someone thinks of something, a kid seeing someone exposed to something young, they think of something inappropriate. But I don't feel like it has to be like
Right.
inappropriate. But do you feel like if a kid is exposed to something younger than, like, maybe you're supposed to see something when you're like in high school, but you see something when you're 5,
Mm-hmm.
do you think something in your brain gets triggered to make you mature faster though?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that comes from multiple things. I feel like epigenetics has to play into that, but also um, I feel like when you talk about even video games at such a young age, I think kids are a lot closer to the spiritual realm in a way where it's like, this projection of life, like they really just take it for what it is, and I think that's why kids are just so honest and are so innocent and pure in that way, because they are really just living life for what it is, and they don't necessarily know about the distractions that come to life, because a lot of times, especially prior to this digital age, that wasn't really a thing for them. So it's like, they really are just, figuring it out every day, literally as it goes. That's why I feel like their concept of time is so strange, because it's like, for them, it's like literally just another day. It's not, oh man, I got to work on Tuesday, so then I should make sure that this happens by Monday, because on Sunday I have to,
Yeah.
it's literally just, all right, I just wake up and, do whatever comes in this day, go to sleep, and then figure it out the next one. So like, I don't know. I think what you're saying is kind of like, it's almost kind of like I think it's called like predictive programming, but I mean essentially just kind of anything you take in, anything you see, whatever level you're at, whatever your mental capacity is, like you will be programmed by that, whatever that is, or influenced by everything around you. And I think kids, especially in a time like this, I mean, are probably like getting that more than ever, because like kids are now pretty much almost in these positions of being people who almost like have office jobs, or like little college students, where
Yeah.
what I'm saying,
That's insane. Yeah.
if you truly think about it, to the point where it's like, yeah, I mean, give a kid, 6 years from now, I mean, a kid is sitting at their desk and, doing the same work level, or maybe stimulating their brain the same way maybe a tax accountant would be, or like, what I'm saying, a CPA or something like that, you know what I mean? And like, it's just interesting, you know what I mean? So, and even the TV shows will probably begin to reflect that, to try to make it seem like more of a normalized thing. But yeah, man, there's definitely a lot happening here, you know what I mean? And I think that's definitely something to keep in mind. But yeah, man, I don't know, man. These some tricky times.
Do you think do you think you can evolve? Like, it takes like animals, like millions of years to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think maybe like just like stimulation from like virtual reality or
Mm-hmm.
like movies or whatever it is, like electronics in whatever way,
Totally.
can make humans evolve, like maybe not like, grow wings or anything, but like literal sense, like maybe like hit puberty early or something even. Like how people try to say like it's in the milk, that's what making girls or guys evolve, like hit puberty earlier than when they did in the
Right.
90s or whatever, like that. Like I'm thinking maybe that's a thing. Like maybe like
Oh
technology or
yeah,
something
totally.
can literally make you hit puberty, which is a sense of evolving faster,
Mm-hmm.
which is a weird way.
I
Like,
think so, honestly. I mean, that's like a very interesting way to look at it, but I totally believe so, because I feel like, and I feel like a lot of that is just vibrationally too. Like, if you surround yourself around certain vibrations, eventually you become the company you keep, that kind of thing. So it's like, I feel like with something like this, if you were surrounded by like, I don't necessarily like, and I feel like I don't want to get like stabbed for this, but it's like I don't think it's kind of like when like a group of women can be together for long enough that they all like sync up in that way. But it's kind of like I do believe there is kind of a way where something like that can happen, just as maybe like the evolution of a mindset for a kid, and then like the puberty part of like because there's the physical changes of puberty, but then there's also the mental,
mental,
where
yeah.
you're like, damn, like I'm really in this bitch. It's like a 13-year-old, and I think like that'll probably happen for kids, especially based off of either the demographic or like where they live, or there's like social stuff. But like I think like that totally, like with what's happening now, these TV shows, like I think it's speeding their brains up in ways that they don't necessarily know, because they would have never known, like that shit's crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like you go on TikTok and it's kids with millions of followers, and essentially already in the mindset to believe that they have to now produce for an audience, where when it's like maybe 10 years ago, the only thing you were producing was maybe a question to your family, as in like, can I go outside? Yes or no?
Yeah.
So it's like, now you're shucking and jiving in your bedroom, but it's like you got a million people who are like, do this, do that, do this dance, and now feeling like you have to stay inundated with what's going on and stuff. So yeah, man, I think the mind is going to be crazy in the next few years, especially like with kids, man. Like
I know, like, we were just talking about TikTok before during this podcast,
mm-hmm.
and like how we can use it as like marketing tool and everything like that.
Totally.
But I kind of do think TikTok's kind of scary too. I want to be honest with you, man.
What do you
Just
think?
like how like it is in a sense, like it's like in any social media, but it's the most deliberate version of like brainwashing.
Facts.
Like it's making kids want, like, trends is like a type of brainwash. You're like, I want to make you do this because other people are doing this also. So like everyone's doing the same trend or something like that. Or like my friend's cousin, who's like like I think they're like under 10 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like was showing me fucking TikToks of like TikTokers telling their audience to like eat their period blood or weird shit like that. Like there's weird fucking like kids are on TikTok more than like adults are on TikTok. So like kids like are on TikTok more than YouTube, Snapchat, maybe fucking like Minecraft mobile or whatever it is, Fortnite mobile. Like kids are on TikTok a lot, and I feel like we don't see everything the kids are seeing. Like if you're on TikTok for like 10 hours, or maybe that might be an exaggeration, let's say even 5 hours.
You'd be surprised.
Like if you're on TikTok for that long though, the stuff that you're seeing versus what we think the kids are seeing, there's probably a lot of negative stuff that they're just accustomed to that we don't even realize. So like if my friend's little cousin is showing me a TikToker saying we eat our period blood, you should too. Like that's fucking weird. That's like weird propaganda type shit.
I mean, yeah, and honestly too, I feel like with everything going on in the world, kids are probably just very desensitized to like, I don't want to say normalcy, but like, I mean, imagine being, like maybe like an 8-year-old kid right now, say maybe back, like we'll take it like March of last year. And it's like, you go from being an 8-year-old who has just the mind of, a young person. So it's like, your mind is already pretty expansive, this, that, and the third, but that comes with, hard shit of being a kid. And then out of nowhere, a virus hits and now your life is literally changed in a day. And like, you just got to kind of roll with the punches. And like, I think kids are probably trying to lean on other kids right now. And like, I think maybe the virus is just kind of like, I don't know, there's always been something, like I always have this government conspiracy mind that's like, they're using social media to, brainwash the kids because it distracts them from, doing this, and this, but, which it does, I definitely stand by that. But I feel like that's kind of what you're saying of like that, like, kind of like that propaganda, that like third dimensional type of like.
It is from China.
You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like one of these things where it's like, I think the kids will eventually kind of find themselves like, kind of just following trend, or at least getting used to following orders, basically. So then later in life, that's something that they become more comfortable with, which is like, oh, I've been following what people tell me for years, so now I'm going to continue to do that and break away. And like, instead of ever breaking away from that and having a free mind, because a free mind is like a dangerous thing, you're just going to be used to somebody saying, hey, shoot your friend because I'm doing it. And the next thing you know, people are like, did you do the shoot your friend challenge?
Oh shit.
You know what I'm saying? And I need to, now I need to feel like I need to exist in this way, because we all, like, pretty much like the world pretty much will only ever exist on social media as much as, people allow that to happen in this digital age. Human interactions getting cut down, unfortunately. And then, for the kids, it's like, well, this is where I only find my validation. So it's time to do all this crazy shit people are telling me to do, because they look cool and I want to feel cool, because it's not like I'll ever see my friends again in real life. So like,
think about it this way. This is a weird, I don't even know how to really phrase it, but it's like in my mind. So I'm going to try to phrase it.
I'm here.
So when like doctors do studies on like kids shouldn't be using technology this much or blah, 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 those doctors grew up without technology. So they know what's healthy and what isn't healthy.
Right.
So
that's interesting, yeah.
Like my generation, I'm 20, or maybe the generation I feel like 25 is kind of like, how old are you?
23.
23. Mm-hmm. So I think 2 years above you, even like 25. Mm-hmm. They're not using that social media as much as you are, and you're not using social media maybe as much as I am.
Interesting.
So maybe not my generation, but maybe like, let's say 2 generations below me. Mm-hmm. they're only gonna know what technology is. Like I grew up without, Wi-Fi. Even I was born in
Right.
2000. Like Wi-Fi became popular like in 2010 maybe, around there. So like eventually, who's to say what's healthy and what isn't healthy? Because they're not gonna know what it's like not to have technology. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't know how to phrase this, but like, does that make sense to you? Like,
No, I think I think are you kind of just saying like, because I feel like I'm following that as far as like the kids who will never know what life was like before any
what?
of
How
this
are they
stuff.
gonna know what's bad? And like, how are you gonna actually do studies if you're just gonna think it's okay to be on technology for that long and stuff? Like, there's
Interesting.
there's there's a there's a generations who didn't grow up with technology, so they, in a sense, it's not. They know what's organic and what's right from wrong in a
Right.
sense. Even though like you can say they're just not in touch, it's easy for like a grandparent, even though you might be like, oh, you're just out of touch, grandpa. I out of touch, grandma. They're probably looking at kids being on technology all the time and be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah,
But
that's
we're not
interesting.
taking it seriously.
Mm.
But then eventually there's not going to be that what the fuck is going on because everyone's going to have been birthed when there was a generation of technology.
Interesting. Yeah, I never really thought about it like that, but that makes complete sense, and like I feel like that's always been that argument of like, is technology a good thing or a bad thing? But it's like, how do you measure good or bad with something like that? Because it's like, I mean, it's
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 desensitized.
like I feel like this might not be the word for it, but I mean, it's like a very omnipresent thing that's like it's everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And like you really can't you really can't even put that under a lens to be like, oh, it shouldn't be or it should be, because like you said, there will be kids 10 years from now that only ever learn how to communicate using Snapchat or Instagram, stuff like that, and learn like social cues off of things like that, which is only ever gonna like that's gonna be an interesting generation, the generation of the internet, But like that is, yeah, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah,
That's
that's
genius. You should write that down because I'm liking that.
yeah, it's fucked. But yeah, I feel like this pandemic's not going anywhere.
No, fuck no.
Yeah, I think people were kind of hoping that it was going to. I think we're gonna, for the audience listening, I think we're gonna do a COVID episode part two, maybe in a week or so. We were talking about that, but I think everything we talked about on the first COVID episode we did
Hmm.
is still correct,
Oh
realistically.
yeah, I'd love to even go back and hear that, honestly.
Yeah, I think we should, but I know that we didn't think it was gonna end anytime soon, and I just it's it's even weird. Like this is like this vaccine thing. And we're gonna get into this in another episode. But this whole vaccine thing is just how are they? They're like people are like waiting in line for a vaccine. And
Hmm.
there's people who can't even get the vaccine right now, even though it's free because there's so many people that want it. But then in the news, it seems like people don't want the vaccine. So it's like very confusing. Like, do people want the vaccine? Do they not? Like you'll see
Mm.
like things of like someone gets vaccine on live television and then passes out or something weird like that. Have you seen stuff like
Yeah,
that?
I have. Yeah.
Like, so are people actually wanting this vaccine? Or are they not wanting this vaccine? And then I think people are actually now starting to get like even my grandparents who are like not really scared of the vaccine, like not scared of the COVID at first.
Hmm.
Even they are starting to get a little scared of this COVID.
Mm.
Like I think people where I was at the beginning of this pandemic are only now starting to realize that this is actually something serious. Maybe you can blame that on politics and Trump, whatever. Or maybe people are realizing that there's a fucking second strain and that it doesn't just stop at number two and it continues. But I think people are slowly starting to get used to, like, are actually slowly starting to get scared of this pandemic because
Hmm.
I've noticed a lot of people are like not actually seeing, like people that I was hanging out maybe in the summertime even. I
Mm.
was always hanging out with like safe people,
Right.
but like I feel like even people I was hanging out that were safe in the summer are like not even wanting to hang out with people now. Like I think people are slowly starting to realize how serious this is, but it's this is still kind of the beginning.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of like how the hysteria works too for people who um are maybe just kind of a little bit more distracted. But like, kind of back to the vaccine, it's funny too because like the COVID itself, when it mutated for the first time, and that actually happened, like um that was something that happened on its own, and then like, but they were working on a vaccine at that same time. But when the vaccine happened, like they made the vaccine, but then the mutation happened. So like the vaccine is not necessarily going to be able to combat the COVID, because the vaccine that was created was not created to necessarily like combat a mutation. You know what I'm saying? Because like if you make a vaccine for something, like if I make a vaccine for breast cancer, but then it's finished, but breast cancer becomes, super breast cancer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the vaccine is like, oh shit, we were only ready to fight breast cancer, not super breast cancer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like that's one thing to keep in mind, I think, for the vaccine, for people who are thinking about vaccine and stuff like that, because it's like, yeah, I mean, it's something you can definitely rush to do, but also like if you've also just been doing what you can to protect yourself, as far as just like, maybe taking vitamins, eating right, doing what you can, like that's really all you can truly do. Like a vaccine is not going to, especially one that's kind of obsolete in this way, is not going to necessarily provide any benefit, especially, for something that is mutating on its own. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't necessarily stop something like that. Like it's not like, they can give you a vaccine and it's just, hit the COVID once. It's like this is something that is consistently evolving on its own, instead of repeating, it's evolving too, because blank. So it's like, I don't know. I definitely, I hear what you're saying though, as far as people like kind of taking it more serious now. But yeah, I mean, that shit was nothing to play with. The first day that it hit,
Yeah.
that was, that changed the world, honestly.
This is not the flu. I still hear people, like even some of my friends are saying it's still not as bad as the flu. This is not the flu whatsoever. And you can get this. You can get this today, and then get it again 3 months down the road. Like your antibodies aren't gonna stay. I don't even know. I don't even understand how antibodies really work, but I know you can get it multiple times. I'm not
Yeah.
going to try to be scientific about it. Like, you don't want to get this the first time. And people are like, oh, if I get it the first time, then I'm good. No, like, you should not even want to get it anytime. Even if, like, we don't even know the long term effects. Even if you are, like, some people get it. Like, I've had a lot of friends in college who've gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, they said, oh, I only had, like, a head cold or something for, like, 2 days.
Mm.
We still don't know the effects of that. It still was in your fucking system. We still don't know we don't even know exactly if this is man-made or not yet still, right? So
Man.
like you're letting something that we don't know exactly where it came from insert your body,
Yeah,
and
honestly.
we don't know if it's all I don't even know. Like I don't even know.
My money's on man-made, honestly. I just have to put that out there, world. My money is on man-made. I'm like, viruses like these, I'm like, this too specific.
You don't want this fucking shit in your body at all. I don't understand why people don't get that. Like this.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but anyways, you wrote your album during this pandemic. So did you get any inspiration from?
I started it back in August of 2019, prior to the pandemic, but then just different things with life, Motion the Poet series type shit, like all of that had to happen in order to finish it. But it was wild because I knew, like, for what I believe, like I was like, God was telling me like I'm going to need to finish this album in a later time, which then became this pandemic. But it needed to happen because, kind of what you were saying earlier, like I had to get into a very deep and dark place of just isolation and just almost pretty much being uncomfortable in my solace, to then be able to write a lot of the songs on the latter half of the album, because it truly had to come from a real place, and this pandemic like influenced so much of that by offering, like, not necessarily offering in like a generous way, but by definitely like kind of forcing everyone's schedules to become what they did, and forcing people to face the different things that they thought that they had already dealt with, that they didn't, like, whatever. So yeah, totally like had to. So what you're saying, like, yeah, I definitely wrote the rest of it like in the heart of the pandemic and whatnot, but like, yeah, it had to happen like that, is what it seems like,
But you had two kind of projects. What was the first one? It was the mini SlumFlower
Yep.
Series?
So before that, I did one that actually happened, like that was like heart of the pandemic as well. So like that was called Much Love, and that was a mini EP to kind of like I was on a like production journey, like a self-production journey, just trying to kind of better sharpen my own blade with that, but also like still going through like hella shit. But like I didn't like, I had like fallen off the grid, fallen off the world, wasn't necessarily like kind of talking to people in that way, just really trying to kind of recharge like my battery in that way. And when I did, it was something that I released in a way of like, okay, hey, this is where I've been, this is what I've been up to, but like, it it was definitely like a preface for what was about to come, but it was kind of like a, like even I'm very strategic even with like the song title names and stuff, like as far as the intro all the way to Ascension, like
Yeah.
literally from intro to then I was lost, and then like then after that like 5 finer things, because angelically 555 is like a big positive change is coming, so like an affirmation of those manifestations. So then that into Ascension, so like each was like a level up of like, okay, so I'm down now, but it's gonna get, and then I'm hella lost, and then it's going to get better for anybody who sees this, feels that, resonates with that. And then I ascended, and then after that ascension I was able to finish doing what I had to do, which was the SlumFlower Series. And so then even like with the names of those, that like if you look at the album, it's not necessarily like it's definitely a very strategically planned album. It's definitely like a story from the kind of like eerier, somber beginning all the way to like what would be more of like a triumphant kind of ending in that way.
Mhm.
But it's made in that way because it is truly like a transparent just like body of work. It's like a journey, you know what I'm saying? Like it's got the lows, it's got the highs, it's got the crossroad in betweens, but yeah, that all had to happen during the heart of the pandemic.
Dude, you showed me the first song, like when I interviewed you and Jay.
Oh yeah, and that's funny too. To like, I actually kind of forgot about that. But what's funny about that too is like that is like a prime example of kind of where that had to start, which was like more of like that first one, that intro is like the death pretty much of like myself, and then um becoming Emotion the poet, and really kind of being taken over by this ego. And then like each like of course each song just goes back to back to back, but like from like as you as you would know from knowing me from this time, it's like from when you first heard that very first song, when we were in there, we were connecting, even if you look back at the interviews, like the different things we were talking about, how I felt about myself, my craft, like this, that, and the third, the sunglasses, that whole type of thing, like from intro there all the way to this conversation we're having now, it's like, yeah, that was exactly how that started. Emotion poet, spoken word, fundamental, like shout out to fundamental, you know what I'm saying? But like all of those different things, that like that life, all of those things had to come to an end, and they did, and then
It's like you foreseed it.
no, I mean honestly, like that's like exactly what you're saying. Like that's what I was trying to like that's what I'm trying to explain to. It's like this wasn't just like I put together 4 or 5 trap songs. It was just like
Trapping New Year's, boy.
Niggas, you know what I'm saying? It was literally like, oh no, I like these numbers, stuff like that, like whatever. Like I had seen this coming and had to write it out in this way. Like what I began to write, I began to manifest, like kind of like in like a prophetic way. But like that's exactly what happened, you know what I'm saying? So yeah.
So when I see things, I'm not saying I'm a fucking like whatever, I don't know if telepath's the right word or whatever, superhero type deal, but when I say I see things, it's usually when I'm at my best state of like mental health, physical health, and I'm taking a step back and like assessing things for how they are. And I really think this is a weird thing. I wanted to say this again. I really think, for me at least, I felt like carbs and sugar were like a drug that really clouded my mind from things. It sounds really weird, but I feel like when I'm in a good place and I'm able to step back, you kind of, it sounds a little eerie too, you kind of realize how messed up the world is, because it's not really a happy world. There's happy parts to it, and you can make your community happy, but overall, there's so much violence, death, ego. There's so much stuff that there's a lot of happy stuff, but there's also a lot of negative stuff. Like there's fucking countries that want to take over our country right now, and we won't even talk about it. It's just so many. It's like there's like a gun to the back of everyone's heads, and we don't even realize it. It's really weird. But when I'm able to like take a step back, it's not even like you're foreseeing, or like, what's the word? It's not like you're guessing what's going to happen in the future. It's like you can really just step back and like see like the straight path, and be like, how is no one else like taking a step back and looking at what's going on? Whether it's a specific person, whether it's like looking at a specific friend and being like, how do you not see that if you do this, this is what's going to end up happening.
Right.
Or
I
in the
feel that.
bigger, you can take a step back and look at a bigger picture. Like, if a company's doing something, how do they not expect this thing to happen to? There's so many things you can look at, but like, there's so many straight lines, and people just like they it's like they don't want to admit to themselves, but they grow up like seeing vices. Like, people start smoking when they're like 15 or younger. Like, I didn't realize, I thought I was, I don't like to say if I theoretically ever smoked in my life, I didn't realize that people, like, there's a huge large of people that start like in middle school. I didn't even know that was a thing. That's a thing. Like, people grow up smoking or being introduced to drugs that young, and I thought that was like, when I heard that, I thought that was like something that was out of this world. Like, that was not like a common thing, but like, that's a common thing to like be introduced in middle school. Like, I didn't, I just didn't, like, I couldn't comprehend that. But like, if you're like indulging in these like vices and stuff at such an early age, it's not like you even realize that as you continue to mature, that it starts to become more of a coping mechanism versus something that's fun. And that's what I'm starting to see with my friends, and that's what I'm starting to realize just in real life, that people like vices, like peer pressure isn't as like scary as people think it is.
Right.
It's like it's just like, hey man, you want to hit this? Or like, hey man, you want to go hang out by the river with me and my friends and have a bonfire and drink and then drive home? Or like, it's just simple stuff. It doesn't even have to do with drugs even. But there's like, peer pressure is just such a simple thing, and like, you can see it like on TV commercials or whatever saying don't do this.
Right.
But it's super simple. But like, I feel like there's just so many things are very straightforward, and people don't like straightforwardness makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the whole ego thing that keeps people from being able to actually see those things, because I totally understand what you're saying. Like that, I've always been one of those people where I could, like, it would almost seem like I could see outside of what was happening and be like, so nobody else notices it. Like especially if like there was a company that would like treat their employees like shit and then be confused as to why nobody wants to work there. The turnover rate is so high. And like, they'd be confused, but in my head I'd be like, if you just treated people better, because that's always been the thing, like, but like, to what you're saying, like, I understand that, like, it's, yeah, I think it's just people, you know what I'm saying, like, ego will definitely cloud your vision in that way and make you, feel as if you don't need to think about those kind of things, because that could never happen, because maybe you're in control, or like maybe, maybe you'll never have to, like, worry about, coping with drugs, because you're like, I'd never get to that sad point. And then in reality, you're like, wow, I've actually been there. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yes.
yeah, I totally hear with that. Like,
It's freaky. I don't get why. Like, I'm seeing things like in a normal way, but what is normal, people don't think is as normal, because they're not. They're self-indulging, or they just don't want to admit that things are messed up in the world, or
oh
they don't
yeah,
understand how to see things. But a lot of things in the world are very straightforward. A lot of
facts.
like, there is evil and it's evil. There is good and there's good. There can be black and white for certain things, but a lot of things aren't black and white. It's pretty straightforward, but like,
Right.
people just don't see it, or I don't know.
I mean, sometimes they choose not to.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that was even kind of like what, like, the intro of the SlumFlower series was about, was like, I was kind of so caught up when I was, or not like in a, I'm trying to downplay it, but I definitely was so caught up in like this ego that I had, which was like the most straightforward things in my life, which were really just the most everyday simple things. It almost seemed like those were a different language, because they didn't compute with the way that I was choosing to see life, and like choosing to act in different ways and stuff like that. And like, at the end of the day, what I'm saying, when I took a step back, what I'm saying, it was like, oh wow, like, it's really just da 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 da, what I'm saying, so much time has already passed, it's like, fuck. But yeah, I mean, totally, like, I'm hearing what you're saying, like, totally. I just believe it's people's ego a lot of times that will keep them from, because your ego only ever wants to keep you safe, but it doesn't know what safe is, because it's, it's in your mind, so you will feel like you don't need to stop doing something, or you don't need to do this, or you don't need to look a different way, because when you challenge somebody's perspective, you challenge who they are, so a lot of times it's hard for people to not align with just their perspective as who they are as a person. And like, be like, oh shit, like, actually maybe I can look at this a different way, because maybe there will be a benefit that I haven't even thought of, because I would have never known to think about it, you know. And I mean, I know out of my own personal like experience, thus being, how this album came about, that was definitely where I was at, as far as like, oh, you mean there's a whole other life that doesn't exist in the way that I see it in my head? Like, other people don't just go through what I perceive them to go through, or and then the same thing for me. Like, the life that I think people could look at me to have is not necessarily how I really experience it, but ego will keep you from drawing those connections to better deepen that and understand that, you know what I'm saying? And instead just have you working, like thinking about yourself all the time, and yeah, just fucking up everything, honestly.
Yeah. So what is a slum flower?
Ooh, that is beautiful. Appreciate that. Question of the century, honestly. So a slum flower is I've talked about it before in a song, but like a slum flower is like the flower that bloomed in the dark, and it was doomed from the start. It was bloody in a room full of sharks, and you know this is the start. So pretty much that's kind of like anybody who can relate or resonate with that is slum flower, is the flower, essentially like the rose that grew from the concrete, but like the flower that grew in between division and just like other negative forces continuously, like, why are you still growing? But you do, because through the slums you bloomed, you did kind of like a lotus flower almost, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's a slum flower, so the SlumFlower Series is a series of different tracks, which are pretty much just different feelings, thoughts, and emotions that show me blooming in that way. So like from an intro that's hella kind of sad and whatever the fuck, to like all the way of the ascension of like, basically, I was like a caterpillar in the beginning and I became a butterfly at the end. Like that's pretty much kind of like, and anybody who can relate to that, because that's not necessarily just a me thing, but anyone who has had to been or has been subjected to anything that was not beneficial for their growth, either personally, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, and still against all the odds found a way to continue to bloom, like, you are a slum flower. Like, it doesn't, you're like a flower with scars. It's like, hey, they're still there, and that's valid, and that's never gonna not be a part of the process, but at the same time, like, the process never stopped, so
Scars can be beautiful.
yeah, very much so.
If you learn from them. I feel like some people get scarred and they just continue getting scarred over and over and over.
You know what I mean? And that's that evolve or repeat,
Yeah.
And some flowers repeat a cycle that's not necessarily beneficial to their growth. Don't get their sunlight, don't get their water, you know what I'm saying? And then, some flowers are like, wow, shit, I actually maybe should water you a little bit more frequently. And, you know, you get the evolution of that.
Oh, yeah.
You get a whole garden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a slum flower.
Is sunflower something you made up? Or
Yeah, I mean, honestly, me personally, I've never heard anybody ever use that term. I mean,
wow.
the terminology comes from, I mean, I'm sure, like, I am not at all claiming that I'm the only one who's ever said it, because I'm sure that exists in other places, because it's like it is very, very much so influenced, from the rose that grew from the concrete, so I couldn't imagine somebody else had said it, but I also have never heard anybody else, at least in my immediate circle, or anyone who is of influence to me, use that term, because it's also the play on, like, I always use the sunflower, and then like sunflower, slum flower, so it's kind of just like that, because the sunflower is known for being just like a very happy flower, and like, um, I think people who are just kind of known for always being very happy, oftentimes that comes from a dark place sometimes, because they know what it's truly like to not be happy. So they try to stay on that side as much as they can, the happy side, but it sometimes dismisses some of the emotions that were there, like a lot of times the funniest people are actually the saddest people, you know what I'm saying? But they know what it's like to not laugh, you know what I'm saying? And it's like it's very much so in that realm of things, so like slum flower is just that beginning, like it's kind of that paradox or oxymoron or whatever the fuck, like it's like, yeah, I'm slum, which always has negative connotation, but flower, which are, wow, this is blooming, it's beautiful. So just those two things together. But yeah, I've never heard anyone use it. I think I marketed it enough to the point where, like, if you see it, I think you'll maybe associate it with
Put my
me.
respect on my name.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's why, like, I think, my iconography with it is always, like, pretty on point as far as if you look at everything I do, I always drop a sunflower in there somewhere, almost kind of like an Easter egg. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? So that's just where that comes from, though. But that's a SlumFlower.
Have you seen, like, anyone that you're close with get, like, depressed during this pandemic who maybe wasn't depressed beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen a lot of people, like, I mean, this might sound kind of weird to say, but, like, I feel like a lot of people who are around me were pretty depressed, and not necessarily like I had something to do with that. I mean, at least I hope not. But,
Oh,
like,
no, right.
can you imagine? Like, Brian, we fucking hate you. But no, I mean, I think a lot of people who are around me were like that because I think, and oftentimes, like, the company you keep, is kind of a reflection of who you are. Because I think I was myself always in kind of like a lower place, just a darker place. I think the people around me could resonate with that, because, a lot of the people around me are other creatives or, other people who kind of have these extensive lives that are like, kind of always just, either pouring too much of their own cup into other cups, but not maybe pouring back into them. And, like, I think depressed is definitely like it is like a harsher word, but it is something that I think everybody around me, like, I definitely didn't know anybody around me who was like, wow, I'm the happiest soul I could be, because everybody around me is still working on themselves in a way that you kind of have to be depressed to work through that, so you don't kind of get to that level again. So yeah, man, I think I mean, as far as, like, anybody not being depressed, and then the pandemic came and they realized, like, I think I more so have people around me who thought that they had it when they didn't, and that was just their ego that they maybe weren't, like, accustomed to yet. And we're like, oh yeah, like, this is everything I need. And then 2 months went by, and they were like, I was seeing the big, post on either Facebook or Instagram about, oh, I was going through so many things, and in self reflection, because I did that myself, honestly. So yeah, totally. I think this pandemic, like, and that's kind of like not why I made this album, but, like, I knew that, I, like, I kind of have this personality that is just, it's just very much so relatable to, I think, a lot of other people in a way, because my mind is just very open. So, like, you can really resonate with me in a lot of different ways. Like, it's not like I think I feel pretty like a pretty relatable person. Like, I'm just really a regular, everyday schmegular person. So it's like I knew that if I was going through that shit, then I was like, oh, there's got to be, like, I cannot be the only one who is especially experiencing the pandemic how I was. Like, I was like, I cannot be the only one that feels like this.
Yeah.
So.
But what is funny, though, whenever I usually tell people at this point that I have, like, 2 podcasts, and I'm like, yeah, I have a co-host for a second podcast, and I'm like, you want to hear the name? And do a little pause, and I'm like, the BBC podcast, and I'm like, I let people think about it for a second, and then I let them smile, and I say, the Blake Burton and Brian Barnett Conspiracy Podcast. Oh, I just spilled chicken all over me.
Wow, no racial, but that is the blackest thing I've ever said. I just spilled chicken. Oh, I said, are you tired of your chicken falling all over you?
But anyways, whenever I bring up you, I'm like, yeah, I have a dope co-host. It's very spiritual, into, like, angel numbers and spirit signs and all that stuff. Probably butchered half the stuff I just said.
That's okay.
But like, before I even finish a sentence, no matter if it's like a girl or a guy that's, like, open-minded, they'll be like, I'd like to meet him. And they all say the same thing. I'm like, well, is there a thing where there's not enough people that are open-minded, that to the point that when someone hears someone else is even maybe remotely open-minded, they don't care who they are, and they just want to meet him? Or, like, what is that?
Oh man, I mean, well, first I appreciate those kind words. That's love. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that kind of what you were saying. I mean, I think it's like people who are open-minded, kind of just want maybe like that company of a like-minded individual, because I think a lot of times, like, if you're very open-minded, you probably have the experience of being, like, invalidated very often in your life because of that open mind, because you're more than likely around either family or job people, whoever, community that was like, actually, it doesn't go like that. It goes like this. You don't know what you're talking about. You'll never know what you're talking about. If you don't do it like this, it'll never work. Whatever. So it's like to meet other people who are not on that wave, like, hey, figure out your own life and your own journey and your own time. Like, I feel like people are like if you were to tell me that you had somebody who like had similar characteristics or attributes to what like different things I get into, I'd definitely be like, hey, I'd love to connect with that person and see how their mind works. So
Yeah.
I imagine it's probably the same thing on their end,
Yeah, that makes sense. It's
You
just, yeah, it's fair to say. I just haven't really ever really hung out with like spiritual people really, so it just seems like a whole new community. And I don't feel like you're just some fucking crazy hippie dude, but you seem like
That's
you're
hilarious.
definitely a new type of person for me. I think that's why we connect.
I appreciate that. You're like, yeah, I definitely don't feel like you're some weird fucking hippie. I'm sitting right next to you. Like, can you imagine this whole time? I'm like, oh, well, you haven't seen nothing yet.
Oh shit!
Like, hamburgers can see the future, Blake. That's hilarious.
So is the SlumFlower series like you think of it as like a diary, or is it something where you want everyone to relate to? Is it more just a piece of you? Because I feel like some artists, their goal is to have music that's about them, but other people can connect to it. Some other artists have albums that are specific, like fucking Eminem with his Marshall Matters LP album when he's talking about murdering his wife, Kim. It's a very it's directly about his wife. I don't think other people are thinking.
You're like, wow, this is very specific.
Yeah. So like, who's the audience? Is it more of like a therapeutic thing for you, or are you trying to reach out to people like as a handout? Like,
oh
hey.
man, like you were asking and saying all the right things because minus the Eminem part, definitely not that, but it is definitely like a culmination of thoughts. It's a very like an invitation into my mind, if you will, but it's also like it is mainly supposed to like I've always been just about trying to make somebody feel something. Like that was my mission on this earth. Like when I got here, that's why I'm here, is just to make people feel and heighten their vibration so they can heighten their own lives in that way. But like the point of this album is definitely like the audience is truly whoever will listen and then resonate with the message and can understand it. But like this is like a definitely therapeutic, but it's definitely just like kind of like a I see you type of album. Like this is like I'm gonna put myself out there for anyone else who feels like this, and if you do, I'll reach my hand out to you because I see you, I love you, I'm here for you. And if you feel this way, you are not alone at all. Like Heaven Only Knows is I think the prime example of that because like I recorded that song in my room, like shooting a video to it or shot a video to it, excuse me. Shout out to Mike B Films, but like that was the main point of that whole track, which was like, I understand what it's like to be at a crossroads between what I think I want and where I need to be, and my life, my present moment is a culmination of all my past choices, and my future will be a culmination of all of my choices and decisions of the present moment. Therefore, like, I truly understand that. I'm not, taken by that, but like, it is something where like, if anybody can relate to that, you just never really know. But like, if anybody can relate to that, then it's like, press play. Like this is what this whole tape is about. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this will definitely be like, I think it'll be like my take care, like, in a way, because, I kind of like, I hold myself as an artist in like a classy way, in that way, where it's like, I definitely have all these like spiritual, messages and like, positive thoughts, but it's also like, I like, it's all executed in a very strategic way. It's not at all like, I'm just throwing out like, hey, high fives on, track 3, and what I'm saying. But it's like there's definitely like a strategy and an execution behind channeling these messages out and these positive vibrations to people, but also doing it in a way where like, what I'm saying, I'm still like keeping true to myself, which is just like, this kind of like in the shadows character, but like, I'm very hard to get a hold of, but easy to talk to, and like people who relate to that, I think will relate to this album. You know what I'm saying? I think this is an album for the people. Like this is it's got like something for everyone, but not in like a, if you want to dance, if you want to, but something for everyone in a way where I think I touch on a broad spectrum of feelings, thoughts, and emotions that are like, oh wow, I could really relate to that. Like, it's not just about like, getting money and, what I'm saying? Like, oh, I made it out the slums and I'm, signing $1 million checks. It's really about, a dude that has 2 jobs and, is having an existential crisis and just trying to figure out what the next step is. And I laid it out with some beats behind it. And somebody engineered it, and there we go.
Oh
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
And the album cover is like you in a movie theater. So what was the choice behind that?
Oh man, yeah, that's love. So, and it's so funny you brought that up because check this out. You talk about like spirituality. Notice these synchronicities in your life too. But peep this. So, the point of that is because the SlumFlower series, this is like a projection of my thoughts. So, there will be like a video to everything because it's like a video journal, like a diary, like in that way. But, you're watching my thoughts in this way. The reason of the movie theater is because um, and if you notice on the album cover, which was done by my boy Devontae Ford, shout out to him. But if you notice on the album cover, I'm holding a bag of popcorn, and it's funny because my girlfriend V, she actually told me, and she was like, I notice in a lot of these photos, which are your best moments, for whatever reason, you're holding a bag of popcorn, and I'm always holding it in my right hand, which is funny. And that comes from just years ago. Me and my mom, just always like finding just safety and comfort in just the movie theater. Just that was like a thing we would do, and like, whatever. So like, to have everybody who was involved in the making of this album, because this is not just like a me thing, but this is like, I have, Fob Mob Joe, but my boy Joey Dela Cruz, he's, we've been friends since 5th grade. Like, he has an album coming out. I'm executively producing, he's under Emotion Entertainment, like, but that's my guy, that is like my brother. But he is on the, in the top left with the purple on. And then right next to that, Mason Phelan, I met him recently, but one of the most talented producer engineers in the state of Washington, probably even on this side of the West Coast. And he's like 17. Not that that matters, but someone who is truly hungry for the craft and willing to put the work in. Incredible cat. And he's right next to Joe. And then right next to him is my boy, Drew, and he produced track 2, Voices. We've been friends since middle school, like Jason Derulo, Written in the Stars, like we go back, playing, Zombie Island or Dead Island on Xbox 360 back in the day, sleeping over at his house, and like, seeing a dream from, hey Drew, can you come outside today to, hey, can you produce this song? And whatever, so like that shit's just beautiful. And then next to that is Devontae. He drew the cover, but both of our moms have MS, and like we met like back in 7th grade, and like that's my guy. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we've been like cosmic brothers just this whole time. Like right behind him, Ricardo Esteban, incredibly talented artist, producer. Like he produced track 4, Agape, and like what I'm saying.
I thought it was Agape.
Yeah, no, Agape, yeah, is the highest form of love.
Shit.
So I always, I'm always saying, hey, much love, but like agape means the highest form of love, like much deeper than a romantic love, like a love you would have for a child. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's the highest form of love, and he's always shown me that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it was only right, and then of course my girl, she's been through everything that we, what I'm saying, you already know how that goes, but she was right there next to me, because she has seen so many of these things, but has always supported me and just been, incredibly remarkable in that way. So all of us to be sitting there, and then the most important, my cat Pickle in the background.
I met Pickle.
Yeah, that's my boy. You know what I'm saying? He's a special cat. You know what I mean? And yeah, all of those pictured in my favorite setting, which is a movie theater setting, as we're watching basically everything we did unfold in front of us. That was, definitely like the ode to, just like organic love, honestly. Like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's the story behind that basically. But, and that's all of everybody who's named on that last song is everybody sitting right there.
Wow.
And it's funny too, because there's seven tracks, 7 people sitting in there.
17 minutes.
Right, and my life number is 7 too, which is
shit.
beautiful. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. It is literally that, to that level of execution of like, it's not like I was like, this has to, everything had to be just like that. And for anyone who knows me in that way will notice those things. Like even intro 323, like 323 is my birthday. So when you take it from, oh wow, like
it's coming up 2 months away.
Yeah, 24 Kobe year.
Rip.
Honestly, but you know what I'm saying. So it's like, yeah, that was that was the story behind it and kind of the why factor. But yeah, man, that's what honestly, like, that's what made the album what it was. To be real with you, like the visual component, you know what I'm saying, and like being able to see that like that, I was like, damn.
Dude, just imagine when we have fucking money and we can just execute things to like I don't think people. It's a great album.
I
I
appreciate
think
that.
it's awesome. But just I don't think people like the average normal day Joe, when they like look at like an artist's album, like a local artist or something,
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes they look at it as like, oh, this is the best they can do. Like this is they're happy with this completely. But
Right.
like imagine if you had fucking money and like you could turn your music videos into a fucking like movie type deal. Like that's the type of shit like this is the type of things that artists think about, but they execute it on a level where they have the time they can like the time and money that they can actually put into it
Right.
versus like if like artists when artists look at money, well the ones who are true artists versus the one like there's a difference between like I still think Migos are fucking artists and shit like that.
Oh,
Like
totally.
but they're like flexing. But no even actually if you think about it, even fucking Quavo was in Atlanta. Did you see that show?
What the TV show Atlanta?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he was in that show, so of course he's like obviously into like artistic things. So even him, they're definitely artists, but like artists, you like a good artist uses their money as like a key to do more things
Totally.
versus just like oh shit I have all this money and I'm set. That's not what a true art. That's why there's a difference between artists who are, people are in the wrong reasons who just want to make the money off making music versus they look at the money as like keys to do more things.
No, totally. And I think the independent grind kind of like puts that in your face in a way where it's like, if I had like I could make the kind of music that could get me signed to a label that would, pretty much just like fuck my life over, but hand me these checks that would make me feel like they were mine, or like, hand me these different, cool cars and, extra money that would have me like, wow, like I did this by myself. And then, when I don't recoup any of the sales because I was spending so much money on, drinks and, like all these other things instead of marketing or trying to build an actual platform or an audience. And then, at the end, like kind of what happened to Krayshawn, like, from, Gucci, like, what I'm saying
shit.
it's real tough for her situation. I'm not speaking on it at all in any disrespect, but it's like labels will get you like that. They signed her for that record, blew it up, this, that, and the third, what I'm saying, but took a young person who didn't necessarily maybe know the industry that well, just gave them a bunch of stuff, and then now they own that record. She was in debt to them like $900,000,
Oh shit.
because she couldn't recoup sales from, because that's how a label gets you. They'll blast a single, and then when it's time to make an album to recoup those sales, they're like, hey, we just needed that single, but we need our money back for what we did for you. And you're like, well, what about, so it's like I could make music that could get me in that position, but, and I've tried to do that before, but you know what I'm saying? There's something different about kind of this slow hustle grind of like, you know what, I don't have the money now, but watch what I can do with, either bettering my own skills for graphic design or bettering my own videography skills. And then when that money does come, it'll just be mine because I'll have independently, I won't need to pay an engineer, FX producer, FX assistant one, FX, you know what I'm saying? I did that part, I did this part, I did that part, I did, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, and even with Migos, like, yeah, those guys incredible artists too, and even with that, I think there's a level of like, some people are incredible artists, but just do more of the performance aspect, and some, don't always write their own songs or, this, that, and the third, and like, but you have to still be able to do that part, and it's like there's a talent in that too, which is like, oh, okay, like you might not have wrote the song, but you carried it out in such a way that you performed it, where it's like that takes talent as well, so it definitely is a spectrum, but I do hear what you're saying for sure.
Like I just interviewed Jarv D, who's like a Seattle artist, and I brought up KRS-One, who made a song in like the 1990s called "Rapture's Delight." I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like I can't re-sing it. I'm so bad at
re-singing. Hey, no worries.
But it's a great song, and like the chorus is just, it's like ahead of its time, I think at least. The chorus is like insane. The beats, dope. But then like he starts trashing people that are doing marketing and stuff, because like in the 90s, like no one was thinking about marketing. They were thinking about like, are you a real gangster rapper or whatever it is? And now like nowadays everything has to do with, marketing. That's the most important thing nowadays, almost over talent.
True.
But then I showed you like a month or two ago, and this just hit me like right now. And I was like, that's much. When I was talking to Jarv D about that song, I was like, yeah, that's I used a blanket statement, and I was like, every artist in the 90s thought like that. But then I remember like a month or two ago, I showed you a song by Del the Funky Homo Sapien.
Oh yeah, about the industry.
Yeah, about the industry and like like how it's like slavery.
Yeah.
And that was in the 90s as well, like early 90s.
Right.
And if you look at Del now, Del's not putting out, he occasionally puts out new music, But like Dell has been around since the 80s and is still like one of the most classic hip hop artists. Like if I bring up Dell the Funky Homo, that I did a Dell the Funky Homo Sapien interview with anyone who like is into rap, they'll be like, "What the fuck? How did you get that?" And it's still one of my biggest interviews. And I've interviewed fucking TikTok artists that are on the top of their game right now. Or fucking, I had White Gold on, who was on Eminem's album. But still, Dell the Funky Homo Sapiens like my biggest interview to date. And it was interesting. Like he was thinking ahead of his time about like how marketing, like how being independent is actually important, which has to do with. But if you're going to be independent, marketing is important. So basically, he was saying marketing was important.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you're gonna be independent, you know what I'm saying, you have to know that you're about to wear so many different hats, but you know, each hat is gonna pay off, you know what I mean? Because like a lot of people don't think about it like this, but it's like you could be independent and do all these things for your own career, but even in the event music doesn't work out, you have all of these skills that are that'll translate into other things. So it's like, you know, as much as, you know, this music, like, you know, like my main goal in life is not to be necessarily like a musician or an artist. Like my main goal is definitely to just shed my light onto a dark world or into, you know, people's lives and help them get to wherever they need to be, but like doing it with these different niches. But also at the same time, it's like if music doesn't work out, the same skill that I learned as far as branding, marketing, building a brand, a business, management, you know, program development in that way, like I could take those to a company or organization, you know, and like use them there too. So it's like there is a payoff in being independent that a lot of people won't ever see because they'll want the quick, oh man, I can get this quick ass check doing this, and this. But you know what I'm saying? It's like even literally, like I said, if the music thing doesn't work out, I literally have built like literally a resume of skills of just graphic design, you know, videography, photography, da 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 da, that I'd have never really picked up if I didn't try to push my own dream, you know, instead of, you know, hope somebody else would do it. So like, you know what I'm saying? Like it really is, in my opinion, like a, you know, a benefit to be independent to a level of like, okay, let me see what I can do for me first, because nobody's going to see my vision the way I see it. And I'm going to have to be the one responsible to bring it to light. But also when that time comes and that door opens and someone, you know, gets me that check that's like, hey, you know, you can sign this deal, but you keep your independence, your creative control. But here is essentially now a budget to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, oh, wow, I can actually maneuver that budget even much more for to grow actual wealth instead of just, oh man, like, you know, I can get you know, a better studio. Like, no, I can actually just, you know, invest this here, begin to grow generational wealth and do the same thing that anybody else would do in, you know, the top studios in New York in my bedroom with just better equipment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I feel like people just really got to open their mind in that way and just like, you know, push yourself. Like, wow, I could really do this, you know, because like even you know what I'm saying, you have, you know, invested in your craft in ways that other people would have never thought to do because it would have seemed too hard. But it's like the same $200 that you spend at the dispensary on a month-to-month basis that you could put into a new microphone or a new, you know what I'm saying, like those are things that you know what I mean, like, you know, I mean, it's all love, and you know, I you know, no shade to anyone who does that, but if you don't think about it, you'll never think about it like that.
Yeah.
But like, you know, look at everything you've bought recently for your, you know, your craft, your career, and then look back at people who are like, I never have money, but I'm always doing this and always spending it here, here, and here.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, like one day you're gonna monetize off of this one day very soon in a way where it's like, damn, I'm glad I made those investments early on because you have some of the best equipment at such an early age that, you know what I'm saying? And then what you do is forever changing, you're forever evolving. So it's like, you know, you're learning yourself, learning the equipment. Say, you know, podcasting is not your thing, somebody picks you up to be a studio tech. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Eventually get your foot in the door and, hey, actually I have a podcast too, and it's, you know what I mean? So it's like a lot of people aren't really thinking like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you're gonna be independent, you have to. You
Hell
know
yeah.
what I mean?
Exactly.
So
well, if there's one word to wrap up your album, what would you say?
Ooh. Two is always much love, but one word would be probably like
Agape.
Ooh, no, actually, low key. Yeah, low key. Because that's honestly, that's what this whole album is about. This whole journey, this whole experience is just the highest form of love. Like, you have to reach that in yourself to find that in yourself, to be happy with somebody else. You have to reach that in yourself to be happy with pretty much any and everything you do. You know, the highest form of love. So, yeah, agape would definitely be a good closeout word next to stream it on all platforms, you know. But yeah, man, you know what I'm saying? It's just all love always, you know, because if you don't love what you do, Biggie said, if your heart's in it, like, only make moves when your heart's in it, and live the phrase "sky's the limit." Like, that's, what I'm saying, that's what I've been living since I was like 13. So
Hell yeah.
10 years later, here we are.
What's the easiest way for people to reach you?
Ooh. I am on all platforms, BRY444N, all platforms, and then on Instagram and TikTok at emotion_isn't_weakness. And that's your boy.
Oh yeah, and this is the BBC/NAST podcast with
Bryan Barnett
and Blake Burton. There we go. Thank you. Agape to everyone.
Come on. Yes.